Hey, good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, depending on where you are. Wanted to come back to you guys with our second episode. It's been 2 weeks since we had our first episode about navigating the acronyms of security. Rick was on with us 2 weeks ago to help start that process and talk through the cyber defense matrix, but we've got a couple more kind individuals from the cybersecurity space here today, and really excited. I've worked closely with all the people that you're seeing here on the screen today, and some of the best and brightest in the cybersecurity space. So, with that, we'll get into some introductions here. I don't know how things are laid out on everybody's screen today, but I will start with Rick. Rick, I know you were on the last time. If you just want to kind of re-intro yourself, and then we'll jump to the next person here on the slide.
Yeah, I'm not the most important person today, so I will not take time. My name is Rick Mishka. I am a cybersecurity subject matter expert for Avant Communications. Next.
I think that's up
Oh,
to you, Lou.
listen, Rick, I think you're very important in that, intro did not really merits a lot more. But anyway, I'm Lou Raban. I'm the CEO and founder of Cyber Defense Group. We're cybersecurity advisory, and essentially we provide vCISO architecture and engineering expertise into a single program, and that's what we do is security programs.
Okay. Michael, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hey, I'm Michael Leggett, Principal Security Solutions Architect at Avertium. I help folks think through their cybersecurity and compliance challenges.
And last but not least, David.
Good afternoon or good morning as appropriate. I'm Dave Sampson, the Vice President of Cyber Risk and Strategy at Thrive. Thrive is a full service managed service provider, MSP. We're also a managed security services provider as well as a private cloud provider. And we have some AI offerings as well. My role at Thrive is to operate our consulting group. So we are a team of subject matter experts on cybersecurity, IT infrastructure, 365. We help customers understand what current state looks like within their organization and how that aligns with best practices.
Awesome. And with that, I know David kind of jumped into it, but I'll jump back to everybody here that's from a vendor, and we'll let you kind of talk a little bit more about who you are, what you do, what your niche is, or your go-to-market strategy, or what separates you from others in the security space. So from alphabetical order, I guess we'll start with Avertium since they're in the top left here. Michael, do you kind of want to talk a little bit about what Avertium does for customers in the security space and their approach to the security landscape?
Sure, yeah. So at Avertium, we are a cybersecurity and compliance services organization. So no proprietary products of our own. We just try to meet clients where they're at, help them think through their overall cybersecurity and compliance program and fit in where they need help. So whether that's managed services, professional services, strategy, hands-on keyboard, it's a lot of the work we do with an emphasis on the mid-market.
Gotcha.
We have a particular emphasis on the Microsoft ecosystem. A lot of people are asking for help around that space, how to optimize it, how to get the most from it, how to stay secure through that adoption. So a lot of the work we end up doing is around that.
Gotcha. And Lou, you guys really have a unique approach over at Cyber Defense. Do you want to talk about your approach to assessment through and continuing through your assessment almost as a assess to service type of model that you do over there at Cyber Defense Group?
Yeah. Thanks, Chris. We are doing these security programs, always starting with an assessment to determine, where the clients are at. We work with also mid-market companies and the smaller end of the enterprise, sometimes big enterprise. For the mid-market, usually we're replacing or acting as the team. And our unique value prop is that we're doing it on a fixed fee recurring basis. So we're not doing project exceptions. We're not doing project work, but we always start with that assessment. Of course, we build a 3-year roadmap and we work with the business stakeholders, not just the IT or security people, but also the C-suite and board to ensure that we're aligning all of our security outcomes with business outcomes.
Yeah. And David, I know you spoke a little bit at length about what the team over at Thrive does, but if you want to talk a little bit deeper about your strategy, I think I would say out of everybody, you're kind of in a unique position of individuals that are here today. I would refer to you guys as really the only MSSP out of the group that's here today. So maybe you want to talk a little bit about that, touch on your strategies.
Yeah, sure. So we are a full service MSP, MSSP, and cloud provider, as I mentioned. So we're about a 25-year-old organization, 1,600 people globally, very significant footprint within the US as well as outside the UK, Philippines, Australia, Hong Kong, Singapore. And we are able to leverage a number of different technologies, and we deliver all of those technologies as managed services to our customers. So when it comes to cyber risk strategy, cyber risk mitigation tools and technologies, we have a full suite of offerings, generally multiple technologies within a specific product line. We leverage ServiceNow as our core tool, not just to interact with our customers and manage cases and challenges, but also for provisioning. So there's a lot of scale behind what we do. There's a lot of engineering resources. We're about an 80% engineering focused organization from the perspective of our headcount, many certifications, and a lot of experience. So we're really able to help customers with specific challenges. So if they're looking for, one or two or three specific point solutions or product sets, but they're looking for the right expertise to have those delivered as a managed service, we can do that. Or if they're looking for a end-to-end suite of services, we can deliver that as well.
Thanks, David. So if everybody watched last episode, or if you didn't, let's catch you up to speed. So we talked about the cyber defense matrix. We talked about this as, the eye chart that's the pie in the sky version here that we're looking at. It would be great if everything could be fulfilled on this. I'm sure the gentleman that you see sitting with me today, we'd all love if every customer could handle or have all of these within their environment. It would run a pretty tight ship, but we know that that is not necessarily feasible for most organizations. And so I know we had talked about how to map yourself to this, how to look at this. And one thing that I did is really sat down, I rewatched the episode that I did with Rick and put together some kind of industry roundtable questions. And so I'll actually start this next question. I'll start it with David because I think his group out of anybody really is poised to answer this question. They've made a transition from initially being an MSP to that further and deeper security MSSP practice. So with that said, David, I'll refer this question to you. All the time, we talk to customers and you'll see people get IT and cybersecurity confused. So I'll ask you, what is the difference and are they interchangeable, whether that's within the customer environment or the vendors that service a customer for those two items?
Sure, and I think it's an interesting question. Are they interchangeable? The direct answer is no, but I think having worked in the technology and IT space for really most of my career, at the end of the day, everything can trickle down to IT one way or another. Everybody knows that if they need to get a problem solved, to go find the IT guy and he'll work on figuring it out. But cybersecurity is really about mitigating the risks presented by technology to the business, right? So what tools do we need to control those risks, protect ourselves from those risks, measure the effectiveness of how those tools are working, and take an overall layered approach. And I think one of the things here that's really significant is very often we talk to customers and other folks who their cybersecurity strategy is really looking to their IT provider, and they don't necessarily have a direct cyber strategy, right? So really, when we think about cybersecurity, we think about cyber risk mitigation. In an ideal scenario, in best case circumstances, the key leaders of the business are understanding what the business risks are associated with cyber. They're making determinations around the business's risk tolerance, implementing technologies to mitigate that risk, and also effective recovery strategies. And those recovery strategies are architected to meet the requirements of the business to sustain operations. So that provides business leaders with the opportunity to make decisions around, how long can we afford to be down for? What does degraded services levels look like if we have an event taking place? The IT folks, the technology piece, they'll assist with operating some of these technologies. But I also just want to put on a side note that it's really critical when you're thinking about your approach, when you're thinking about solutions and tools, what skill sets and qualifications are going to be applied to the implementation and operation of those tools on an ongoing basis, right? These tools come from a variety of technology and software vendors and manufacturers. We want to make sure that we have the right people with the right skills, experience, and certifications deploying and managing these tools or on an ongoing basis, because at the same time, we'll see tools deployed, and it's generally the folks that have maybe gone out on a limb to identify how to deploy a tool on their own. Those folks are generally the ones that fall victim.
And I'll
And
lean into that, David, really quick, just because you ended it with that. On the human side, an IT professional inherently has a different role than a cybersecurity professional, and they are being trained in extremely different. Now, I'm not saying that one can't do the other, but if you talk to most people that came out with a pure cybersecurity tag, they don't know a lot about what happens in IT. They can't set up a mobile device manager, right? They just know what the logs look like. And on the flip side of that, I think it's easier for IT professionals to be upskilled to cybersecurity. But if you ask them what an incident response should look like, they are likely going to go, I don't know, I got to make sure that the switches let the internet through. So, and I know that's very, very, very low hanging fruit on that front, but I do think that the human side of this is where it really fits.
And Lou, I think you have a unique approach to this with what you guys see as kind of coming in as that consultant to a lot of businesses that have potentially a pre-existing IT team, a pre-existing cybersecurity team, or both. So I'd love to hear your take on that question.
Yeah, I mean, this is such a great question too, and it's really important. I'm glad you asked it because there is a lot of misconception around it. Essentially, cyber cannot do their job without IT, full stop. So what we need to do is become partners, but IT is looking at it, obviously, like Rick said and David has mentioned, keep the lights on, do the work. And often, sometimes that means taking shortcuts. And it's cyber's job to say, wait a second, that's easier, but it's not safer. The other thing is that the IT team is always often looking at things from a technology point of view, obviously. The people and process part, that's what we bring to the table at Cyber Defense Group, and that's what's really necessary. So as part of our engagement now, we do an IT assessment, IT capabilities assessment as it relates to cybersecurity, because we want to understand, can these two operate? And I've seen it on the enterprise side where when it goes wrong, it goes really wrong. So really IT and cyber are partners. There's overlap, but they have to work together. And that's the way that we look at these engagements.
Yeah. And Michael, I think this is also a good question for you guys because you sit so closely in that Microsoft ecosystem. And a lot of times I think there's a lot of questions around where the IT role ends inside of that Microsoft suite and where the cybersecurity professional role starts in that cybersecurity suite. I oftentimes hear of customers that are looking to implement those services. Maybe it's DLP, maybe it's Purview, maybe it's Azure Sentinel, and those go kind of past what most of the IT professionals are doing in those suites. So why don't you talk a little bit, because you have a unique idea on that too.
Yeah, 100%. I think specifically for the Microsoft ecosystem, one hand washes the other in that when you look at things like Intune, which can be leveraged for mobile device management, but it's also a means for enforcement of conditional access or DLP on the endpoint, there needs to be a synergy between those two departments to understand not only from an ease of use or user impact perspective, but also how is this going to inform the larger cybersecurity program. So to what some of the other people on the call were speaking to, there really needs to be an understanding overall of how this ecosystem is going to be impacting the user and how it's impacting our overall level of risk that we're trying to keep at. What Microsoft offers with their ecosystem is one sort of cohesive look. But if any one of those parts aren't doing their job to drive towards that acceptable level of risk, then you're incurring what could be a lot of challenges down the line. So having everyone on the same page as to roles and responsibilities and overall impact is really important when we begin the the setup, so that we can strategize and understand where the end goal is once everything is fully implemented.
Yeah. Thanks, Michael. So I grabbed this statistic from Gartner because I thought it was very important. I know everybody on this call offers probably some version of managed cybersecurity. So this is a really great statistic. We're actually inching up on the back end of this statistic coming to fruition from Gartner. So a 2024 Gartner report highlighted that 60% of SMBs will outsource at least one core element of their cybersecurity program to an MSSP by 2026. Well, we're almost there. So that kind of leads into another question that I have for everybody, which is why do you think organizations are moving to a managed security model, and what benefits do you think they're gaining from utilizing a managed service provider or an MSSP to help perform some of these functions? I think I'll start with Lou, because you guys have a managed component of the compliance, but I'm sure you interact and work with a lot of other MSSPs that potentially are already in that customer when you're doing an assessment of their security environment. So maybe if you want to take this initially.
Yeah, we work with the MDR providers, et cetera. That's not something that we do. So it's the reason that organizations are moving to this model is it makes sense for them. They can't afford the level of talent, and it would take them so much longer to build these programs and these teams themselves. Just one cybersecurity professional is probably the entire budget of for them, and that's a mistake that I see a lot of organizations make or have made in the past, and now they're learning that that's not great, is to just hire one person to do it all, and or to give that job to the most senior IT person on the team. Now you're going to do security too. Typically, they're already very busy doing their IT job, and then to just load them up with cyber is just a recipe for disaster. So, we're seeing a lot of companies do it, and it makes sense. That's why we do it, because they can get a team of professionals that collectively, just the team that we bring to bear, would their payroll, it would be well over whatever budget that they're looking for, and they're getting these experts dedicated to them. And then also with MDR, things like that. They're not going to, these SMBs especially, but even mid-market and often enterprise, they don't want to train up 20, 30 SOC people. It makes sense for them to get an external provider to do this for them.
And with that, Michael, I think this is a good question for you guys. I see you guys all the time add value to the customer by managing that Microsoft environment and the security side of that. So I'll bump to you next. And what are you really seeing as the benefits of moving to that managed security model?
I think if the managed security model is being exacted properly, then it shouldn't just be a siloed sort of responsive service, right? So if you have a managed security provider that you trust, that understands your environment, there's also a lot of guidance that can come from best practices of how to evolve. It's not just saying, all right, here's some alerts, go address these, but it's helping the client understand here are changes that you can make. Here are things that are coming down the line from the product standpoint, because we sit on these roadmap calls. We understand how this is going to impact user environments. Here's better ways to optimize the licensing and things that you're paying for. So it really is kind of an extension of their team. So not only do they have someone handling the day-to-day detection and response to keep them secure, but it's also providing thought leadership, guidance on what the next 6, 12, 18 months look like.
Gotcha. And you talked about extension of the team. So I'll kind of tee that to David as part of this question. We talked, Lou, you said about having a team of cybersecurity professionals in-house, but the reality is no matter if they do have that team or how big that team is, they have to take vacations, they have to sleep. So David, you guys as somebody, and Michael, you both have people who are 24/7, eyes on glass. You're operating NOC and SOC services. So David, maybe you want to talk a little bit about this question and how, like your SOC services play a part in that all as a benefit as well. I think you're muted, David. There you go.
I apologize. Time is something that's very precious when it comes to responding to cyber events, alerts, et cetera. So, deploying tools is a very good step, but if we don't have somebody monitoring those tools on a 24/7 basis and actually taking action based on the alerts that are coming through, we haven't really gotten to where we need to be from a risk mitigation perspective. So ensuring that 24-hour team exists within a SOC who's prepared to receive the data inbound from whatever tool sets you're using, right? And very often those are multiple tool sets, as I mentioned before. Having the right SIM technology in place, automation in place, and engineers in place 24 hours a day is generally not something that most organizations are budgeting for or even looking to build out. So outsourcing is a great opportunity when it comes to SOC. I very often tell customers that when they think about what they need to outsource, they should evaluate what skill sets exist internally, operate within the boundaries of those skill sets where they can perform well, and then look to a qualified provider to outsource for the skill sets that they don't have that they need to supplement, right? So personnel redundancy, making sure they have the right qualifications around the right technologies and experience implementing those on an ongoing basis. That's going to provide the protection that organizations need at the best levels.
So last week, or 2 weeks ago, we talked about security acronyms. So I'm going to ask everybody, and we can just kind of go in an order here. What are the top 3 acronyms that customers believe is integral to their security stack from your point of view? And there is a follow-up question to this one after everybody answers. So, Michael, we'll let you start. What do you think are the top 3 acronyms that customers believe are integral to their security stack?
So clients are, they talk a lot about identity protection. So IAM. I get asked a lot about DLP, even though when you start talking to them, they're more so talking about a larger data governance program, and then some form of MDR, EDR, XDR. And obviously those have different applicability depending on who the vendor is and what the actual customer asks are. But I think those are the 3 areas that get brought up the most to our organization.
And Rick, how about you? I know you act as on the consulting side, so you see a lot more from the customer's point of view. Like, what do you see as their top three acronyms that you're hearing over and over again?
Amusingly enough, I think all of these folks will have great answers, but for me, it's M365. Microsoft 365 is the acronym in and of itself, and I also obviously am hearing AI. Tons of artificial intelligence.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll throw a couple out. I think that the 3 big ones that I hear are, like Michael said, EDR, MDR. I hear a lot of ZTNA. I think people think that ZTNA is not a mindset. I think they feel it's a product that they can just go buy, a box off the shelf, and now they can go, look here, I have ZTNA. And then SD-WAN or SASE is another big one that we're hearing more and more about as, kind of those classic MPLS things get replaced. But Lou, what are the top 3 acronyms that you're hearing in your consulting basis with customers that they think that they're integral to their security stack?
Yeah, I'll start with AI because obviously that's top of mind for everyone right now. And I always tell them that AI security is data security, because that's what they want to know is, are they using data incorrectly with these AI models, sensitive or confidential data, which leads me to my second acronym, which is DSPM, or Data Security Posture Management. And that's essentially the new way to say DLP, which is where's your data? Where is it stored? How is it shared? Who's it shared with? And usually what, cloud, platforms is it spread around? And, that goes to, cloud security posture management, or CSPM, or there's CASB, or other terms, which are basically what are you using both public cloud for, and then also any of SSO being enabled in any of the millions of different SaaS tools that companies are using.
And last but not least, David, what do you guys see as the top 3 acronyms from customers?
I mean, certainly, folks, everybody's talking about AI, right? Everybody's looking for their AI journey, their AI story. So AI comes up pretty often, very often, some version of endpoint protection. So MDR, EDR, XDR, those are the things that people are hearing about, and one that hasn't come up, but I think, one of the things about these acronyms is our knowledge of what acronyms are and look like is much deeper than many end customers, right? So, customers, they're very often thinking about things like MFA. MFA is something that's very within reach for them. They've been asked to do it. Their providers are requiring it. They see it on an ongoing basis. Also, many customers will have some kind of dip their toe in the water around a NIST or a CIS, understanding that these security frameworks exist. They may or may not understand the full depth of those frameworks, but they're certainly aware of them. They've certainly heard of them from colleagues, advisors, et cetera. So that's what I would go with on this one.
Gotcha. And I said this was a 2-part question, so I'll jump into the second part of this, and we'll go back through in the order. So David, do you think those align with insurance and compliance, or do you think they align with industry trends? I heard a lot of AI, so I'm going to guess most people here are going to say the industry trends, not the insurance and compliance side. But how do you think about that?
Yeah,
Do you?
I think both really, depending on what we're looking at, right? So AI is certainly the trending thing, but things like MFA, XDR, SIM, SOC, those are all things that also fall right within those insurance and compliance areas, right? DR would be another one. Most customers are very familiar with what DR is and generally what that means. Sometimes business continuity. The acronym soup within our space is a very, very deep pot of stew.
Lou, how do you feel about that? Do you think it aligns?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough because you know it's true that we have way too many acronyms. So essentially, acronyms aside, I think the biggest secret in cybersecurity is the boring stuff is the stuff that doesn't get you hacked. So you can chase the shiny, you can chase the acronyms, you can, these are all things that are in some ways distractions. I think the biggest acronym is, well, not even acronym, but concept is people, process, and technology. You just need something repeatable that's going to ensure that you have, something bad's going to happen. And I think that that's a trend here that, it used to be that you didn't have to have the best security because really they were only going after the juicier targets. But now with the way the ransomware industry is and how this has turned into a real financial model, it's actually a job and a business for many bad guys. This is now everyone is a target. AI is accelerating this. So essentially the just doing the basics is more important than knowing the acronyms.
Okay. Rick, how about you?
I'm actually going to take this from a different perspective because I think a lot of industry trends are being driven by either philosophers who are trying to read the crystal ball or by revenue. And I think insurance and compliance are driven by risk. Sometimes they cross over, a lot of times they don't. And so whenever a company is looking at it, why did the insurance company enforce this or need this? They have millions of data points that show what risk actually is. The industry is going, I could turn that into $1. And so I think that that's where we're having a disparate connection.
Yeah. And Michael, I think this one's an interesting question for you, just because I think a lot of customers come to you with the security and compliance question, and they're saying things like, how can I leverage the platform that I'm already in to get better with those acronyms that are top priorities to our security stack? So, same question for you.
Yeah, absolutely. What I tell a lot of clients is you're not one product away. And that's just in a general philosophy. I think for a long time, people were trying to chase after the next product. I need this one particular product in my environment because then that's going to make me secure. And what we've seen as they've matured in their security journey is an understanding that it's better to have an A plus program with maybe C plus products than the vice versa. Because again, as companies evolve, as compliance or insurance trends evolve, if you just focus on doing the right things within your organization, focusing on your acceptable level of risk and how to drive those things, the other areas will sort of fall into place. So the big trends that we're seeing around AI or around, let's say, specific asks around DLP, which is in many ways driven from the adoption of AI, aren't necessarily insurance or compliance trends. I think to Rick's point, they're driven from a sense of how do we make more money within the organization and how to apply that. But the lessons learned over the years of understanding we're not one tool away, and by introducing new tools, we're going to be introducing new risks, has really helped people reframe how they want to responsibly adopt that AI, which in turn does help them align with best practices, be that insurance requirements or compliance requirements.
Thanks. So I'll come back to you, Michael, specifically for this question to start out again. What security products or services provide customers with the most bang for your buck? And I think that's a unique situation for you guys because, again, you're trying as much as possible to leverage what exists within potentially already that business premium or E3 with an E5 mobility and security step up or an E5 license. So maybe you want to talk about this from your perspective. What do you see potentially in those suites that turning it on gets a lot of momentum for that customer from a security stack perspective?
Sure, I'll answer this in two ways. I think the security product that provides customers with the best bang for the buck is the one that they're already spending money on. So a lot of times, my work is just helping people understand here's what this licensing level affords you. Here's the best way to optimize these tools that you have. Here are things in your environment that you could sunset because that's duplicative. But I think just more generally from a philosophy standpoint, it's the best security product or service that you could have is one that is a programmatic emphasis, right? So what are we doing around people, processes, procedures? How are we getting the best use out of whatever our tool set looks like today? And that is going to help in the long run much more than any one simple product would or any suite of products would.
Lou, what do you see from the consulting side of things? Gives that.
Yeah, I mean, Michael's got it's a great point, and the programmatic side, also the configuration of the tools that they already have. Often, they might have bought a tool and they aren't configuring it correctly, and therefore it's actually not protecting them, and they're paying for it. That's always a big shocker to them. So I think it's really understanding the security products you already have. Why do you have them? I think asking the why is really important for customers themselves to be like, well, why do we need this? But not, do we even need security? Obviously, that we're past that. You definitely do. But like, why do we have the tools that we have, and how do they cover? But from the services side, which is what we come from, I'll just echo what Michael said about the programmatic. You need a programmatic way of approaching this, or the best tools in the world, most expensive tools, are not going to protect you.
And David, what are your thoughts?
When it comes to making decisions around cyber risk mitigation, cybersecurity program, our overall strategy, budget is always an important consideration for the business on any expense that's being executed, right? But there are costs to operating cyber risk mitigation strategies, and generally those costs are less expensive and more predictable than waiting for an event to happen, right? So any spend that you're making around cyber risk mitigation is generally effective spend. Usually one of the conversations I have with customers that are more budget conscious is, what is the best approach for us strategically to implement tool sets? What are the, what's the foundation of where we need to start that is going to provide the best protection for the organization? So maybe that is endpoint protection or third-party email filtering, security awareness training, secure DNS. Those are some of the things that kind of exist at that foundational level. And then there's, creep into the IT side as well around systems patching, right? But kind of how do we plug into a framework that we're going to drive our strategy around it and put together the foundation of that framework? That's where organizations are most likely to realize the best gains and values, in my opinion.
And Rick,
yeah,
I was going to say, I'm interested to hear what you say, because again, you and I are in a unique situation, not working with a specific vendor. We kind of take that agnostic approach. So we see a lot of the customer side. So what are you seeing as customers that are getting the most bang for their buck out of a security product or service?
Yeah, I'm going to give three headings. I'm not going to talk about artificial intelligence. The first one is the one that people are asking the most for, and that's email security, because they're seeing value from the fact that phishing is still one of the top ways in: the front door, back door, side door. So that's the one being asked for the most. It's not always the one being purchased the most. The one that is being purchased the most, that has become commoditized, so arguably biggest bang for your buck, is a managed endpoint detection and response tool, or managed EDR. Not to be confused with MDR. Chris and I talked about that last time. And then finally, the thing that I think people are really buying into and seeing the most human capital value, and what I mean by that is they're seeing their humans that they employ have more time in their life, is patch management as a service. Patching as a service has become this extremely lofty goal of pushing it out into the third-party mitigation side and not doing it internally. So those are the three I see for completely different reasons.
Yeah, the glamorous part. There's no glamour in patching. Nobody wants to be patching a firewall or an IPS update at 3 a.m. in the morning on a Fortinet device. Nobody wants to be running their third bout of Windows updates for the Spooler vulnerability that's come out this month for Microsoft. So I know
But
we
the
talked.
impact is huge. Sorry,
It
just
is.
to,
No,
yeah,
totally.
it's not glamorous, but the impact is enormous.
Yeah, and I think one of the things, I'll just chime in here quickly, but if you can't provide evidence around what you're doing, you're basically not doing it, right? And that speaks to the importance of having a patch management tool and being able to report on what your patch status is on all of the machines that are within your environment. Patching is not sexy. Everybody hates doing it. But some tool needs to be behind it, and it needs to be executed consistently, because that's actually one of the biggest gotchas when we do see events happen is, uh, vulnerabilities are identified around maybe things that were or weren't patched, but how many times have we seen significant widespread events taking place around machines that are left unpatched in a variety of circumstances? And it's a lot.
So I know we've kind of talked a little futuristic here about, what customers might be looking for, how they're getting the most out of products that they can acquire. But the next question, what do you think organizations are getting right when it comes to cybersecurity today? And when I ask that, I'm not necessarily meaning you guys, I'm meaning customers as the organizations. What do you think they're getting right? What do you see the trends of the things that companies with good cybersecurity practices are doing to maintain that?
Yeah.
And
I'll,
I'll throw it to
I'll
Michael.
start it off. Yeah. I mean, I think now versus even 5 years ago, you're seeing much more buy-in and alignment from top down about why cybersecurity is needed and necessary. This was sort of touched on from, I believe it was Lou previously, but you're not really having to explain why you need cybersecurity. It's more so trying to optimize that. So a lot of organizations today are becoming much more mature in their understanding that this impacts the business and the need for it. Um, to that point too, I think when we talk about the things that clients are doing right, they have gone through the cycle of buying the silver bullet and having that silver bullet not work in a way that was not true a few years ago. So people were promising them the world, or this thing was going to solve all their problems. They implemented that tool and it didn't deliver. So I think there's a little bit of maturity that comes from just putting your hand on the stove and getting burned and understanding perhaps I should go about my evaluation process differently, ask more stringent questions, understand how this is going to impact my environment. Do I have the people power to implement this properly? What are the larger ramifications? And I'm seeing much more maturity from the organizations that are doing it right when it comes to an evaluation process.
Rick, what's your thoughts on this?
I think it's simple. They're talking about cybersecurity. I think that when they're doing it right, the board, the senior leaders, the worker bees are all talking about cyber. And when they do that, yes, budgets get in the way. Yes, marketing, fluffs things up as to what they should be buying. But if they're having the conversations, they're so far ahead of everyone else who's not. And that's the biggest thing that they're getting right.
Yeah. I mean, I think everybody on this call today would agree, we did not see the lead with cyber just 5 years ago the way that we do today. It wasn't the same mindset. It almost was seen how IT was seen 15, 20 years ago. It was an operational expense. I think that has shifted a lot. I mean, Lou, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's first off, it's tying it to outcomes. They're finally understanding that cyber is something that has a business effect, and rather than looking at it as a cost center, to your point, Chris, it's actually an investment, and they understand that they have to invest to make sure that they have the right program, et cetera. And as Michael said, these silver bullet solutions, and it was because a lot of PE and VC money was dumped in the last 5 years, 10 years, where there was a lot of shiny marketing stuff that misled a lot of people. Now they've been burned, to Michael's point as well. So they took their hand off the stove and said, okay, how do we do this right? We don't want to feel that again. And so now they're really looking at it as a business problem rather than just a cost center where they have to tick a box.
Gotcha. So next question, I have a unique question, and I want to start with David. I want to hear your take on it because you guys are functioning as that MSSP. So this is a question that I'm sure everybody has gotten from their customers. What do you think? Should I maintain an incident response retainer or call and initiate when a cyber incident occurs? I know, as you provide those services, maybe you're going to have a unique take on that, but just kind of want to hear what people's thoughts are.
Yeah, I would generally lean towards having some retainer in place. And the reason I say that is that it helps to validate what your strategies look like and put some processes in place to provide a predictable recovery if an event occurs, right? So generally, as part of these retainer-based incident response services, there might be some tools deployed, there might be some processes developed, there's generally some verification around what data exists, where it's stored. So you're basically collaborating with a provider to stage appropriately to make sure that you have the pieces in place to recover successfully. So if you go down that path, you're going to be better positioned to recover from an event as quickly and efficiently as possible, and in a way that's predictable for your organization, that aligns with some expectations that have been established. And I will tell you, we do provide the service. We only provide it for Thrive customers, but if you subscribe to a certain set of our services, we'll actually provide it for free. The challenge I see when you go into the initiation when an event occurs is you're generally engaging some third party that is kind of coming in. They have to get the lay of the land. They have to understand what's going on, identify what paths to recovery exist, and then systematically go through those paths to determine whether or not they're going to be successful. So there's just a fair amount of uncertainty that comes with that path. Now, if you get in that situation and that's the best path that's available to you, of course, we know lots of folks that have taken that path. But from the proactive approach, which is generally what we are preaching when it comes to all of this, the incident response retainer is going to help you be in the best position possible to respond and recover if and when an event occurs.
And Lou, I know your team is on the receiving end of a lot of these phone calls. So what is your take on this?
Oh man, I mean, we could spend the next hour talking about this, so I won't do that. But it's really interesting. Obviously, the first step of incident response is actually preparation, and therefore, there's no question that doing incident response proactively is the right way to go. As David was saying, it's when the call occurs and you call an outside firm, we often see such mistakes as the IT team is like, we've had a breach, and they start emailing people about a breach. That sets a shot clock off, depending especially what industry they're in, et cetera. It's just a really bad idea. If you have an incident response plan, it should say the obviously incident commander or incident lead is the one to call a breach, not the person getting the first call or seeing the first signs of an incident. So yeah, absolutely having a firm on retainer to do this proactively, understand your environment, as David mentioned. That's key, because then they know exactly, they're going to save so much time, and you're going to save a lot of money as well. But also in these proactive incident retainers that we do as well, there should be services involved. We've replaced a lot of firms that go in and they say, okay, you've got a retainer, and it's just basically a block of hours that they say, if you have something bad happen, you're going to pull from this block of hours. You're paying it proactively. That's not the way to go. The way to go is to have that firm that you have on proactive retainer actually preparing you for that incident, and that includes tabletops. That includes looking at your plan and your program, things like that. So they should be consuming those hours, and that's the way we structure. I recommend they do that as well. And finally, one final point on this is, you also have to make sure that the insurance company is going to understand that you are the retained firm, because we've been running into that too. There's insurance panels, they want to use their people, and therefore you need to get that worked out on the even the MSA side.
Right. Rick, maybe you want to touch on that a little bit. I know we've had some pretty detailed conversations. Lou touched on the incident response team that a cybersecurity or a cyber insurance company is going to help provide. But I think oftentimes we've seen that they're not necessarily always there for the best interest of the customer. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, for me, don't have a better call Saul moment, right? Don't just look at the billboard and ring somebody. I think you have to have, if you don't have a retainer for incident response, you actually should at least have a retainer for a breach coach, which should be a lawyer. The minute you do that, you call that attorney first, you get that privilege. So cone of silence for the layman out there. And then they can work with the Thrives, the Avertiums, the cyber defense groups to make sure that they're sharing to the public, to the insurance company, to the government, what's supposed to be shared without actually giving their liability away. So for me, it's if you don't have a retainer for incident response or defense, DFIR, at least have a breach coach.
And that kind of leads me into the next question. So Michael, I'll tee this one up to you. Is cyber insurance important? And if so, what are the important aspects to consider? I know we all know that cyber insurance is pretty important to most organizations, and I think that big switch that we've talked about over the past 5 years with cyber being at the top of the conversation instead of at the bottom, I think everybody in this would agree that that's probably been driven a lot by cyber insurance and cyber liability policies. So what are your thoughts on that, Michael?
Yeah, I think it's important to note that there is no standardization within cyber insurance about how they evaluate an environment, about what things will make your environment more secure. The questionnaires that you're getting from them and the questions that they're asking are trying to determine their particular risk. And if you look at the evolution over the last, call it 5 years, you'll see a real monkey see, monkey do within their organization of like, oh, that guy's asking for a SIM. I'm going to ask for a SIM now. I'm going to ask for EDR, MDR. So I think there is a place for it within your overall cybersecurity program, but it cuts both ways. I think it is putting more emphasis for some organizations around cybersecurity for the purposes of checking a box and helping with a policy. But where it can run awry is when you are creating your program to align with what's going to most benefit you from a cyber insurance policy. And that is not helpful. This is not a NIST CSF or a CIS set of controls. This is something that they are using to evaluate. So do I think it's important? Yes. Do I think it should be the North Star for how you should align your cybersecurity program and where to invest your money? No, I do not.
I think there's another colleague that most of the people on this call know, but he refers to it as the lie to comply, which is kind of being able to check those boxes because, as you said, they think it is the North Star and they think they're going to be held accountable in a different way if they can't check all the boxes for the cyber liability or a cyber insurance rider. But, it really is just kind of that insurance company attempting to mitigate as much risk as possible. Lou, what do you see from your side on the importance of the cyber insurance?
Yeah, I mean, having done a number of these breaches, it often will pay for a lot of the, like even ransomware payments. Some of the older policies, at least, were paying for those. But what we're seeing now is, so yes, the answer is yes, cyber insurance is important. The problem is, or the challenge for companies is how are they going to comply with the requirements that Michael's talking about and not in a checkbox sort of way? Because the other thing that insurance companies are very good at is not paying their policies out. And that's because you can drive a truck through some of the things that they require. That, reasonable cybersecurity, how do you define that? Usually they say you have to have certain things, like you must have logging, you must have maybe an MDR firm, you must have endpoint protection, but they also put other things in there. And now they're starting to write policies such as they won't protect a claim against insider threat. So if you do have a malicious insider that became the reason for your breach, you're actually not going to have that covered. So you definitely need a lawyer or someone who's very versed in these policies to look at it. And then when it says you have to do something as a company, you better be doing it or you're just wasting your money on the policy. They won't pay if there's a claim.
Gotcha. And David, I'm going to pivot this question just a little bit for you because I think this is a good one for you. Somebody asked from the audience, how do these proactive services work when an insurance company is involved? I think no better than you, David, from Thrive to help answer that question because you guys are the proactive side and you're doing some of that incident response, but you're also working in the event that these companies have to pay the cyber liability insurance policy rider.
Yeah, and I think having us involved as a provider, it's really a path to ensuring that the evidence exists around the tools that have been implemented to show their effectiveness, and being able to have the right resources and people available to produce that data, assist with data recovery, execute the tools as they're intended to be executed in the most efficient way possible, right? So at the end of the day, we're working for the customer. Insurance, cyber insurance is a tool in the recovery toolbox. It's kind of something that you need to have. I think most folks would say if you didn't have it, that you weren't aligned with best practices, but it is not the end all be all. You don't want to give up control of what's happening with your organization and your data to the insurance company, because as mentioned previously, they will be acting in their own best interests. And also, and I've seen this one a couple times, and it sounds silly, but cyber insurance is not the path to ensuring that you don't have events take place, right? Some folks have this belief that there is this cloak that exists that once they sign up for cyber insurance, they're generally protected by some cyber insurance contract. That does not provide any protection to your organization to keep you out of the challenges of cyber attacks.
Awesome. And I know we're getting close to time on the hour. So we'll kind of put a nice bow on top of this all. If you could sum up cybersecurity landscape in a one word or phrase, because one word's probably pretty difficult. And listen, if you'd let the marketing trends tell it, we'd use the word AI to sum that up. But if you could sum up cybersecurity landscape in one word or phrase, what would it be? And I'll start with Rick on this one. What's your word or phrase?
Did you run this through ChatGPT just to see what the one word it would say is? I'd be curious at that point. But while we're talking about it, I think if you ask the customers, they're going to say shit show. I know you're not supposed to swear on a webinar, but that's what they're going to say. They're going to sum that up right now. There's thousands of vendors out there saying that they do something. You have to be able to weed through the noise. And so for me, it's just take a breath, understand what's right for your organization from a risk standpoint, and don't let the noise batter you down.
Michael, what's your thoughts?
Consolidation is the word that I would use. We're seeing a lot of mergers and acquisitions, companies buying companies, big companies buying small ones, a couple mediums coming together, and you name it. Name your favorite vendor. They've probably either bought a company or been bought recently within the space. I think we're going to see a continued trend towards that. And the best predictor of the future is usually the past. And I see a lot of similarities between what's happening right now in the cybersecurity space to what was happening in the cloud space in the 2010s. Everybody and their brother had a cloud offering. Then the big boys came and gobbled them up. And now you got 3, 4, if I'm being generous, true hyperscaler offerings. And I think we're headed towards a similar trajectory within the cybersecurity space, where you can choose to be a small time vendor, your mom and pop, or you can be McDonald's. And there's not really going to be that space in between, where everyone's working towards having a one robust solution that they can offer and package and push to market.
Lou, what do you think?
Yeah, I'd echo what Rick said if I were being pessimistic, and it is extremely true, unfortunately. However, I would say my word would be evolving. And it also speaks to what Michael was saying, which is that this industry is evolving. It was embryonic. Now we're kind of at baby or even toddler stage, but we're still in the early phases. It's not a mature industry by any stretch. So we're evolving. We're constantly evolving already. That's why most people that are good at this are attracted to it, because it's different almost every day. So it's still evolving, and I think that we're starting to see a maturity coming. We're not there yet, but at least we can, I think, see light at the end of the tunnel.
And apparently, Lou did not come today himself. He sent his chatbot because ChatGPT, when asked the question, said constantly evolving as its one word or phrase. So,
and I swear I did not use a chatbot for that.
Well,
yes,
I will tell you, I threw it into Google and I got escalating as one of the responses. So there you go.
Interesting.
So David, are you going with escalating, or do you have your own mindset?
Escalating, evolving is certainly appropriate. I do think that we are, as Lou was just mentioning, but we're in the infancy of so many things right now. What we're doing with AI today that people think is incredible is going to be not even relevant a few years from now. But required, right? Business executives, business leaders, the ultimate holders of risk at organizations need to have a handle on this situation. It's an evolving situation. They need to make sure they have access to the right experts. the right strategist to position their organization, provide them with the protection that they need, and they can't ignore the reality of what's happening here, right? And I think that's really what all of us, and I know that all of us have worked together in different capacities on this call today, but that's what we're all really doing when we're having conversations with customers, is we're trying to help them understand what the pieces of the puzzle are that they require to do the best job to protect their organization and align with their requirements. And also helping them to understand that the right level of evidence and validation is required once they implement those solutions so that they can measure the effectiveness of what they're doing on a regular basis. Those are kind of like the basics to what needs to happen for every organization. Define a strategy, implement tools, measure the effectiveness of those tools, validate, and then continue to evolve as required and expand the overall strategy.
Yeah, I think that measured effectiveness is really good. I'm sure everybody on this call has heard time and time again from a customer that has a security vendor in place already, and we get statements like, we don't know what they're doing for us. So being able to measure that performance, I think is very critical, David. That was a good touch point there.
When we do assessments for customers, the worst day is when I have to go tell a CFO or CEO that, oh yeah, you've been paying for this tool for 3 years, but guess what? It's actually never really been deployed.
And I'm sure, Lou, you run into that a lot too on your side.
It's so common. It's really kind of sad.
Yeah. And I think, Michael, you experienced that from your perspective, but with, Microsoft's vast and wide offerings that they continue to, place the next prize in the Crackerjack box of offerings that they have that they're bundling under a single SKU. So, I know you see that every day.
Yeah, helping people uncover what they're paying for and then helping them identify where there's multiple areas of spend that they're accomplishing twice and that maybe they don't even know that's a possibility is a frequent conversation that I have.
Well, we are very close to time here, gentlemen. I want to thank you all. I know everybody's super busy on this call, so I appreciate everybody taking time out of their day to sit and talk shop and have a little roundtable here about the cybersecurity space, where we are, where we're going. Appreciate you all, gentlemen. Thank you so much.
And a
Thanks,
pleasure.
everybody.
Thanks, Chris.
Have a good day.
Thank you, everybody.
Take care.